See how floppy my hair is.
You're beautiful. Beautiful boy. A beautiful Turkish boy. What episode are we on, Will?
We're on episode 13. We were going to do Zizek versus Peterson. We weren't going to do a versus, obviously, because we know better than that. And we were going to do something, I think you said you want like 45 an hour, snappy, done, gone, as like a thingy one, and then back into 2 hours again.
A thingy one? Oh, well, I don't care with
it. Just the chat and stuff. I think, were you saying we need to do some stuff that was like more to the point because we dribbled for about 40 minutes?
I don't know that people don't like us not dribbling. I mean, I took your point about, I went and looked and it seemed that people really enjoyed, more than anything, the poo story.
I know. I thought that.
I mean, I've never been the recipient of such compliments for such an absurd tale. Let's talk more about shagging and pooping.
Shagging and pooping. That's what we obviously want to fucking hear, don't we?
Yep. Okay, so we're going to discuss Zizek versus Peterson, which neither of us is really qualified to do.
No, not at all. Not
bluff our way through it, as we have with everything else.
Yes.
I will largely be defending Mr. Peterson.
Well,
you as a filthy fucking communist traitor. Disgusting. Traitor, Corbynite, Russia lover, Putin nipple slurper.
Nipples.
Just his nipples. So I guess, well, we started recording now, so trigger warning. We're idiots. We might say something stupid. We're definitely going to say something offensive. Well, I'm going to try hard to be as offensive as I can.
So are you going to upload all this stuff as well? Or
yeah.
You want me to do it?
Yeah, I'll upload it and I'll chop it first and I'll upload it and I'll convert it to audio as well.
Right. Okay, sounds cool.
Yeah, and I'll upload to both SoundCloud. I don't know why I went fucking Scottish then. SoundCloud and YouTube.
I like that.
Dicky bastard.
You know what? A slightly reserved, slow Scottish accent, I think, sounds really, really nice and comforting. But the second they get pissed, it's like, oh, there's a headbutt coming.
Yeah. Gentle, intellectual Scotsman, fiery bringer of death and stabbing Scotsman.
Yeah. It's like either really nice and huggy or really horrible and headbutty.
Or this will leave you with scars.
Yeah.
Now then, William, let's proceed straight in. Okay. No preamble. This is the first time people have seen you.
Oh, yeah, I know.
I love the way you've set up your shot so that you're squinting the entire time.
I've got great hair as well. I should have swapped to the... No, I can't swap to the other side because you'll see my kitchen, man.
No, let's just have it like it is. Let's not traumatize people. They're already going to be traumatized with swearing, obscene ideas, and utter gibberish masquerading as fact. So let's not traumatize them with the hideous horror show that is your kitchen, pouring with Ebola.
It does have some Ebola in it at the moment as well. Maybe some AIDS in the corner as well.
Zizek's criticism of Jordan Peterson is as weak and lazy as everybody's attempted criticism of Jordan Peterson has been and continues to be. It can be summed up as this. He's not really saying anything. Or if he is saying anything, it's nothing new. Or if he is saying anything, somebody else has already said it. I invite you to retort, sir.
Isn't that what we said?
Yeah, well, what, in the criticism of Peterson?
Yeah, and I don't think we're criticising either of them because we actually really like both of them. I just have a little preference for the snorting Slovenian. And I don't like it that Mr. Jordan is trying to usurp him.
Do you think he is usurping him?
No, I see, to be fair. The more I read about him outside of reading his articles and the stuff he's put on YouTube, I think he's just trying to make money as well. And, good on him. Bollocks to it. He's selling a book, isn't he?
Yes, he's selling a book and he's selling online personality tests and lectures.
Oh, is he?
I mean, it was actually a really good online personality test. Probably the best personality test I've ever taken is by... it's designed by Jordan Peterson. It's the most informative and insightful online personality test I've ever taken. And I can't remember what it's called. But I'm sure if people Google Jordan Peterson online personality test, they'll find it.
What does a personality test do for you, though?
Well, what we psychologists try to do, William, is we try to identify traits and characteristics that form up in clusters that are semi-stable formations, and then we say, well, this is your personality preference or way or mode of being in the world. Obviously, these things can change massively over time. And then the way we test for it is we ask questions that would be indicators of that particular trait that we're looking for. And then the subject, the person answering the test, then answers either I agree, I strongly disagree, I vaguely, or I'm not sure. And then we just sort of weight people for different traits, and then we conglomerate that information into hopefully creating something that would be a useful sort of analysis of what type of person we're dealing with.
Mass hysteria
is always the goal. The problem with these things, as I've said elsewhere, is when you're testing for personality disorders, they're rather naively written, and they end up sadly being shopping lists of traits that are equally weighted. So in narcissism, exploitativeness will be the same as arrogance and vanity. And I'm always like, well, maybe some of these traits are more important in indicating a predatory personality disorder. But yeah, that's how it works. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think from what you're saying is when Peterson didn't do that or hasn't done that.
No, I think it's as far as these things go, where they're very imperfect tools, it's a good tool.
Right. Okay. So what did you learn about? Did you learn something about yourself, or did you just think, I can use that for clients, or was something in there that I found interesting?
I found that I wasn't as agreeable as I thought I was, and that I wasn't.
Really?
Fuck off. And I'm not very polite either. I
would say, I disagree that you're not polite. I would say you're overly polite.
Apparently I'm not as polite as I thought I was. I think I'm too agreeable and too concerned with politeness. And according to this test, it was like, you're not really agreeable, and you're not massively polite. And but I would rate it very high for compassion and self-drive, and quite low for politeness and quite low for agreeableness, which surprised me.
Well, definitely the politeness surprises me, but then it's quite strange, to be fair. My couple of friends that are fucking big shouldered and big armed like you, they've got that same trait, whereas they're super, super, super polite, and they'll go polite almost past the need to then snap.
Yeah.
And it won't just be like polite, get more annoyed. It would be bang.
Yeah. It could be an indicator of like a traumatic response, maybe a more aggressive confrontational fight response to trauma and to stress and to dealing with confrontation, maybe a shorter fuse. I was used to like
I would say it's a longer fuse.
Say again?
I would say it's a longer fuse.
Your internet signal is also a bit dodge. Maybe dodgier than my Portuguese hotel.
I've got Sky Fiber now.
Really?
Especially, yeah.
Wowie. Well, yeah, that's strange then. If you're on a fiber connection, it shouldn't be doing that. Probably somebody's hacking it they're just bleeding your more
robbing or
stealing. Well, you are in the world. Somebody will be stealing something from you at some point. Without a doubt.
Someone.
Yes, exactly. The light is hitting your face in such a way as it makes you look like you've got no front teeth. You look like a hillbilly. Look at yourself. Can you see that? Oh, you do have there, they're back. And now they're gone. Jesus, that is utterly terrifying. Yeah, no, me and my friend Reg from Hong Kong, we're both into Japanese culture and old martial arts stories and Japanese history. And we always have this joke in between us that the stories of confrontation from feudal Japan, the time of the samurai, would be that when people became offended, they actually become more polite, sword drawn, arm hacked off. You know, the end result of a samurai being super polite with you was usually not good. It was usually not, you know, cuddles and gambling and sake. It was usually swords drawn and death. So yeah, it's worth people doing. And there you go is another point that I would make for Jordan Peterson. Whilst he's not the insightful philosopher that Zizek is, which I do believe Zizek truly is. I think Chomsky's accusation that he's just obfuscatory and just saying things to sound complicated for the sake of it, I think is not true, and is a pretty lame criticism, because it's like, well, open your fucking ears if you like. Well, Chomsky actually said if it can't be explained in under a minute to a 12-year-old, it's not worthy of anything. And I'm like, Chomsky,
well, that's bullshit. Just
think about what you're saying, mate. To a 12-year-old, there are many concepts out there that are way too complex to be described, that you couldn't describe to a 12-year-old in under a minute, and that doesn't provide a decent measure of value of a concept. I mean, for God's sake. But what I would say on the Peterson side of the argument is he's giving value. He's constantly giving value. He's constantly giving people things that they can actually use, and it's functional. It's not full of deep philosophical insight, but I don't think we live in times that need massively deep philosophical insight. So people mock him. They'll say in 12 Rules of Life, the first rule is stand up straight. And they'll mock him for that. And I'm like, well, is there another time in human history where we've not needed such simple, directive sort of instruction to people where, you know, we live in a time of total permissivity. As Zizek would say, when everything is permitted, nothing is permitted. And so what he's doing, what Peterson on the other side is doing, is actually bringing back some structure, which is why I think it's called 12 Rules for Life, an antidote for chaos, because of the chaos that we're living in.
Yeah.
What do you think, Rob?
Well, I mean, the thing that I was thinking, I was going to completely agree with you. I was like, I never understand. Well, I say never understand. It's only been like 3 or 4 weeks, hasn't it? Why did he even go after Zizek? I don't understand. Because all Zizek did was what he normally does.
He didn't go after Zizek.
No, he did.
William.
Because he wrote an article saying, you know, he's not actually that brilliant. He's telling you stuff that's practical. And
that was Zizek going after Peterson.
Well, that's not going after him, though. But if he'd attacked him...
Wait. Let's just... Who are we talking about here? It was Zizek that attacked Peterson. It wasn't Peterson that attacked Zizek.
I know. I felt it was the other way around. I felt like Zizek wrote an article.
I mean, you felt it was the other way around. It's not a question of what you feel. It's a factual thing that occurred in objective reality here, which is Zizek wrote an article about Peterson.
Yeah, but he didn't attack him in it, did he?
Yeah, that's how this started. It was a critique of him.
Yeah, it was, and I think it was practical to critique as well, wasn't it? It wasn't. Nothing in it was, I would say, wrong.
Nothing in it was of any particular substance either. I mean, Zizek ended up delivering the kind of critique that he's usually the victim of, which is this guy really isn't saying anything, and if he is, it's not original, and if he is, it's nothing new or nothing that we haven't heard before. That was my point at the beginning of this. Was it was probably a low point for me, for Zizek. One was the endorsement of Trump. The second one was him running away from his endorsement of Trump, which he still does to this day. I was listening to a podcast with him just yesterday when he was questioned about this, and he was like, yes, I did it, but only in 2 interviews, blah, blah. It's like, you fucking endorsed him, dude. You know, you got to be, in these times, you got to be more careful than that. And then the third thing is, out of the blue, he writes a critique of Peterson. And it's hard to not think that, you know, both of them are businessmen, of course, and we don't begrudge them that. It's hard to not think that the Spectator or whoever he was writing for just said, hey, Slavoj, do us a favor, mate. If you lob a grenade at Peterson right now, it's going to get us some coverage and it's going to get you some coverage, so you get paid more at your next lecture and more of your book sales will go up.
Yeah.
It wasn't
in the Independent.
Insightful.
No, I'm not saying it was. I don't think it was insightful. I just thought that Peterson's constantly going on about how people don't debate anymore and don't agree to disagree and don't actually discuss. They just go. I mean, it's the criticism he's always leveling at the left, or what he calls. No, he doesn't call them the left, does he? What's he call them? The new left, or I can't remember anyway. So the extreme left, and he says they just dive straight to violence and you're wrong and dogmatism and all that. And that's exactly what he did, I thought.
Peterson originally was wrongly criticizing postmodernists, and that was his first big mistake because he ventured out of psychology into politics. And this is a valid criticism of him, is that when he goes outside of philosophy and psychology into philosophy and politics, he stumbles a little bit. He was criticizing postmodernists as though postmodernism was a unified political party or one structure, where really, as we know, it's a new interpretation of art primarily, and then everything else that is after that is kind of vague and very open to interpretation. And that's the point of postmodernism. It's let's be open about interpreting reality. Let's break it open. Let's not be modernists. Let's not be absolute and certain that this is that and that is that. Let's question everything. So it was only a point of view, but Peterson attacked it as though it was like an ideology, maybe in the same way that communism has four legs, stands on its own, has a structure, blah, blah. That was wrong with him. He was also conflating the radical left, social justice warriors, the left, and postmodernism. And then somebody got a hold of him and said, listen, JP, you're fucking this up, mate. The word you want to use, the term you need to use is the radical left. And then I don't know when it started, maybe 6 months ago, he got really precise and just started saying the radical left, the radical left.
Yeah.
Which includes the cultural Marxists.
Yeah, but do you feel in any way he took that article as almost like a personal jab at him?
Who? Peterson?
Yeah.
I think he overreacted to it a little bit, but in my humble opinion, because there's all like if somebody levels a critique at you, there's all kinds of ways that you can respond to it. If it were me, I would probably say I would be looking for the opportunity in it, and I would be looking for the opportunity to build a bridge and just be like, okay, I've taken on board your various points. Here's what I like about what you have to say, Mr. Zizek, and here's what I don't like about what you have to say. Would you care to debate this? And they're talking about them debating in a public forum. And just from a business point of view, Peterson could have owned that. He could have said, just you and me will debate. We'll charge a fee to do it online, and people can pay to watch our online debate and ask questions and watch it live. And idiots like you and me, who would like to be cleverer than we really are, would have paid $15 to sit there and watch it live.
Oh, yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. If we do it live in a hall in New York and you can dial in or whatever, I'd do that.
Yeah. So he missed a trick there, and he answered it from a position of somebody who was insulted, because he then shot back with, oh, Mr. Zizek, you really dialed this one in. And I'm like, but that was what happened between Chomsky and Zizek is they kind of like, they shoot back, they go into confrontation mode, and they start chatting to each other online, like rivaling rappers. And I think it's a mistake. I don't see them necessarily as being on two different teams. I don't see, because, I mean, apart from anything else, everybody assumes Peterson is of the right. He's said he's politically liberal. He's a politically liberal man. Yeah, probably fairly middling. But he says because of his psychological outlook, he's liberal and probably left leaning. The only thing that I've heard him say he's conservative on is sex. He says sexually, I'm a conservative. I've read things online by people who are smarter than me that say that actually he's a classic. This is what conservatism used to look like. English conservatism, apparently. This is what it used to look. Yeah. Well, they started using long words, Will, and I got confused. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about.
English conservatism, and we're talking about Whigs. What are we talking about?
A certain period in political history that I know nothing about. There was apparently here that apparently is more of what Peterson probably belongs to. But when you start taking a nuanced view of anybody's politics, what I like about that and what makes me happy to still say that I'm a user of postmodernist theory is the more nuanced a view you take of anything, the less certain everything becomes. And that to me is healthy. So you go, he's a conservative. You look a little closer and you go, no, he's not. He's liberal. You look a little closer and you go, actually, he's left-leaning. You look closer and you go, no, there's another manifestation of politics that nobody's talking about anymore that goes back 120 years. And he's that. Okay, fine. The more nuanced we are, I think the more specific we can be in our thinking of any subject, and that really, really helps.
So are you saying he's conservative with a little c?
I think that was what the article was saying. I don't know enough about it. And quite honestly, that's not how I'm splitting the world at the moment, because I really don't care.
Okay.
I don't think that's what's going to save us. I think a better split is going to be intellectual or anti-intellectual. The better split is going to be nuanced versus fucking screaming dimwit that wants to kill you. Whether you're Antifa or neo-Nazi, I don't want to be punched in the face, thank you. I would still like to talk and think. And when you hit me in the head, it stops my capacity to talk and think. And I think Zizek and Peterson would agree there. We do need to think, like as Zizek has said. I don't think Jordan Peterson probably isn't aware of it because he probably isn't familiar enough with his work. Zizek is saying, don't act, think. He's been saying that consistently. One of the things that he is consistent on, I'm still pissed about the Trump thing, is don't act. What is it the right time to do right now? It is the right time to go and read. It is the right time to go and think. Don't hit the streets. Let's not fight. Let's think. Let's talk. And that's, I think that they could both agree on that. The other split that I would have, and this makes me question Zizek, is moral and immoral. Intellectual, anti-intellectual, nuanced, unnuanced, or reactionary and emotional and upset. And the other one is moral and immoral. For my money at this particular point in history and culture, Zizek is too morally vague for me.
I don't think he's morally vague, is he? Do you think? I don't know why.
He might be the philosopher we want, but he is not the philosopher we need. He doesn't want to be the philosopher we need, by the way. These two men have very, very different ambitions.
And I think what he's more about is I think he's genuinely a teacher. You know what I mean? Like, to me, it's reading an article and thinking about something in a completely different way and explaining to me. I have to read it 2 or 3 times, but actually making me think in a different way. When I think I've understood something, generally I'll read something by Zizek and go, oh, no, you haven't, dummy.
Yeah.
And the superego injunction to enjoy is always my biggest point, is that I really did think I was cracking the service of a little bit of economics, a little bit of liberalism, a little bit of neoliberalism, a little bit of sociology. And when you read that and he's intertwined everything and you go, oh shit, this guy's, it makes sense to me. And I think empirically and quantitatively and qualitatively, it makes sense.
I smiled.
So
Chomsky said that Zizek was empirically wrong. And Zizek said, nobody has ever been more empirically wrong than Chomsky.
But he just cuts through the bullshit. Like, I love it when he was talking about postmodernists and he was saying, and he says, so they straight away, anyone who believes in a postmodern doctrine and studies that and is a lecturer or a student of that and wants to read a lot about that, that's fine, that's good, because you're reading, you're learning and interested in something. But do you think, from what Lacan said about the big other, so do you think that doesn't exist anymore? You think everything is just about choice? And he said, right, okay. So in his mind then, and his point being is that somehow the idea has got into institutes of education to try and prove that the big other doesn't exist. So the big other is in fact proving the big other doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Because the big other can only come from institutions of education.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the type of insight he has.
So I would then go maybe you go from the opposition to the integration. I think this is from thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. Is the point of agreement between these two men is to actually, first of all, what should be said, Zizek has said multiple times, he's not there to provide answers, he's there to provide better questions. He thinks that's what the job of a philosopher is to ask better questions. And he said that over and over and over again. Secondly, he also wants to clean up the left. I don't think that the radical left and those who are proponents of postmodernism needs to be eradicated. So I would try to round people up and shoot them, but it does need cleaning up. You know, I think we're both of the left, and I think from day one on these podcasts, we've both been critical of the radical left. I mean, it's gotten regressive. It's gotten as regressive. You can start to draw historical parallels now between the radical left and pure fascism. You know, I did a tour today in Lisbon, a walking tour, because I turned 40 today, and I'm doing my Julia Roberts midlife crisis.
Why everyone would do that? Lisbon's pretty as fuck.
Well, I'm living eat, pray, love, so I'm I'm going to explore the world. I'm going to make love to handsome Mediterranean or Asian or just foreign men. Well, they'll make love to me. I'll write poetry about it. I'm going to lots of fruit. And on my Instagram, there's just going to be pictures of flowers and just poetry. Just life is for living. We are all equal. The stars blink upon us all. That kind of thing. You confuse me there. That's the second time I've mentioned my own latent homosexuality in one podcast.
Maybe it's something about being in Portugal for you.
Maybe it is. Maybe it is just. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Something about Portugal. Yeah, so they were talking about the fascism that ended up breaking out here during their revolution. And the tour guide was saying the revolutions in Portugal were pretty bloodless. You know, when there was a fascist takeover, we were in such chaos that people they didn't welcome it, but they didn't fight it. He said barely anybody died. One guy banged his knee in a car crash and somebody else got upset and had a heart attack whilst arguing in Parliament. So, but there was no revolution. And then we went into quite a stern form of fascism. And of course, the first thing that then he was describing how the takeover of intellectual thought and discussion, there were certain things you couldn't say. There were certain things you couldn't publish. There were certain things you couldn't write in the media. And that's what that little piece of history from Portugal, well, that's what the radical left is working very hard to do right now. And it's spread, it's worse because it's spread like a meme, and it's fostered in certain enclaves. It seems to be very powerfully entrenched in academia and also online. You know, everybody's offended. Everybody wants to edit words. I was threatened the other day and they went, "It's a wonderful time, you're a bad man and censorship is coming." And I'm like, okay, you want to attack me, that's one thing. I've been working online for 12 years. I'm used to being attacked. The fact that your nipples are so stiff over the prospect of me being censored. Like, people are like, censorship, yay! No more shouting, censorship, yay! No more fist pounding in the air. It's offensive to people who like fisting. Censorship, yay! No more hand gestures. It's offensive to people who don't hands. It's regressive. We're constantly regressing back in what we can do and say and think. And so that's worth attacking, for sure. That's worth attacking.
No, I mean, that's one thing I learned from Peterson's early stuff he was talking about, was saying that we don't have any narrative or understanding of what the far left is in the West.
Right.
And I was like, bullshit. I've seen loads of documentaries, and I've seen that World War II documentary by Laurence Olivier and all that. And I was like, no, we've definitely been told about it. And when you go do a little bit of reading, no one's told us fuck all. Well, no one told me fuck all, definitely. I
wasn't taught it, but I damn sure had Nazism and the Holocaust and all of that shoved down my throat. Yeah. Like, they held the back of my head and pumped. It was that's the third time, Will. The third time. I think I need to see a therapist. They were really the films, the TV shows, the fucking everything. It's like, okay, we get it. Jesus Christ. I actually had an argument with somebody about this recently because their 15-year-old had been shown. Have I already discussed this on this podcast? Does this sound familiar to you? A 15-year-old being shown Schindler's List?
No.
And I said, I don't think that is particularly appropriate or necessary. I mean, apart from the fact it's a violent film, it's a good film. Violent film full of really horrendous imagery. If you're not then going to show Yugoslavia, if you're not going to show Bosnians in concentration camps, literally like a 3-hour drive away from where these concentration camps were, we're only going to show concentration camps with Jews in. We're not going to show concentration camps with Muslims in. And people watching this will be like, there were no concentration camps. Oh, you go Google that shit. You've been waiting to say that. It'll ruin your fucking life. Well, certainly ruin your dinner. Yeah, concentration camps in Bosnia with full of Bosnian men just being starved to death. And that came out. That happened like a year to 2 years after Schindler's List was released. When we were all sat in the cinemas crying, going, "Never again, never again. We'll never let." Next week we're doing this. Where in Africa? No. We're doing it in Europe. We're doing it in a place that is literally parallel with Rome. You just go, there's Rome, there's fucking Sarajevo, there.
So you've just jogged my memory, and I was so we did a podcast last week, and you were talking about your mate who was in Bosnia.
Yeah.
And you were talking about the Dutch guys who were getting tried in The Hague.
Yeah.
Speaking to one of the guys at work. He was out there, and he was like a mile away from those Dutch lads.
Right.
And he was like, there was 300 of them, and there was like 7,000 or 8,000 Yugoslavians. He was like, those poor lads, what did you expect them to do? They would have died instantly.
Yeah. They would have absolutely been killed. They absolutely would have been killed. I mean, it's
just awful.
It's awful. I mean, imagine the trauma as a human being, and then as a man, and then as a man who's chosen this particular role, of just standing there whilst that is happening. I mean, I am a masochist and I like the truth, so I've studied exactly what happened, and very few people know just how bad it got over there. But like, just extend your imagination to the worst places possible. That's the kind of thing we're talking about. I mean, it's was people. Fuck knows what happened. Some sort of mass hysteria, some sort of craziness took over. The worst things that you can possibly think of occurred, and those guys are watching that. I'm not just going, oh, these poor fucking Dutch guys. What about the Bosnians that was happening to?
Yeah, exactly.
What about the Croatians that happened to? What about the Serbs that happened to? Just have to say, I have a lot of Serbian followers, I think, because, well, the standard of English is higher, so I don't have... No. And I've already mentioned, like, on my Instagram and on a Facebook page about our great-grandfather died 100 years ago last September. Do you know this?
Yeah.
In Thessaloniki, just helping the Serbs.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's an interesting piece of history that I didn't really know anything about. And some of my Serbian followers were like, yeah, but there are good Serbs too, you know. And I was like, whoa, calm the fuck down. We went there to help the Serbs. He got killed by some Bulgarians. I'm not saying Serbs or Bulgarians are bad. Like, you know, that's just what happened, because politically in World War One, you know, it's really, I mean, for Americans, this must be like, what the friggity fuck? I mean, for English people, none of us, see, this is another part of history we don't know. We're not taught.
No, not taught.
Anyway, you spammed me off there because you were talking about.
You know what I did find out as well?
Sorry. What?
We back?
I'm back.
Yes, right. So the other thing I was going to say is one of the guys at work was explaining to me, you know, the Dutch guys.
Yeah.
2/3 of them were troops as well. They didn't want to be in the army. They didn't want to be there.
Isn't that incredible that people who are like either weekend warriors, you know, territorial army or national service end up on the front line? How the fuck does that happen? Unless, I mean,
it wasn't even TA. Apparently, they were conscripted.
Holland had conscription in the 90s.
Yeah, apparently 2/3 of them were conscription. Conscription. That's right, isn't it? Yeah, conscripted.
He's saying conscription, but I presume he means national service.
Yeah, national service. Yeah.
Because it would be national service. Yeah, that's crazy, and it kind of would lead one to be a paranoid conspiracy theorist and think, why would we do that unless we wanted things to go wrong?
Yeah. I mean, he did talk a lot about because he was been in a lot of areas of the world, and he was saying that he said it just sends these poor young lads insane. Like they have to adhere to this rule of law, which is this global rule of law. But every other person that's trying to kill them doesn't give a fuck about that.
Yeah. Oh, that was what I was going to say.
Right.
There were Serbians and Croatians fighting for the liberty of Sarajevo as well against Serbian nationalists. There were people in Sarajevo fighting back who were of multiple ethnicities. Need to say that. Also, there were Serbs who were killed in Sarajevo by foreign mujahideen who came in, who would get hold of people in the streets of Sarajevo and say, recite the Quran or recite prayers back to me. And if they didn't, they would cut their throats or cut their heads off. I'm going to leave it there. Other stuff went down. Nobody needs to know unless you want to know, in which case you might need to take a day out. Yeah. You're right in that we're taught one part of history. And I think the way we got to this was we were talking, you were mentioning how we're taught about the roots of the radical right, but we're not taught about the roots of the radical left.
No, but it hasn't affected Western culture, has it? Well, it's had an effect on them, but it's too far removed for it to be a cultural narrative. I think that's right. That makes sense.
So because we haven't actually had the Red Army knocking on our door saying, we would like to set up camp in Bristol and Manchester will be our base of operations, we're sort of blind to it in a sense.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I think. I mean, we haven't lived it, and I don't know anyone who has lived it, and I don't think there's anywhere in Europe other than a little enclave of Spain that tried to be really left for a bit, and that was quickly destroyed, wasn't it, by some more fascists. So it's not really, it's not a thing.
Well, you've known Yugoslavians.
Were they radical left, or were they just radical fucking jobs?
No, they were. That was pure socialism. It was militant socialism, bordering on communism.
We're back.
Hi, where did you go? It was. Certain things were enforced under those conditions. So you've known some Yugoslavians and that, but their experience wasn't awful, and it kind of worked. I mean, you had a kind of social order. And there is an intellectualism that I have found amongst middle-aged Yugoslavians that they're very proud of. And there's almost like, there's a word for it that I can't remember now. It means, now I can't remember both words. There's a word for when you look back in the past and you love the thing, but you're looking back with pink rose-tinted spectacles. What the fuck is that called? Yeah. I want to be back in the past. What do you call that?
I know what you mean, rose-tinted spectacles.
God damn it. Well, there's a word that's in Bosnian, Serbian, Croatian, that's Yugoslavian, wants to be back in the past, where you fantasize that, like, it's like, oh, it was so wonderful. There was no race, there was no religion, because it was completely banned. There was no fucking religion or race. We were just Yugoslavians. And you'd be like, no, I'm Bosnian. Shut the fuck up. No, you're not. You're a Yugoslavian. And that was the way it was handled, and that's why it worked for a period of time. And it was
to be
effective.
Well, I mean, I'd say that Jordan Peterson and Douglas Murray are arguing for something not as extreme as that, but something close to that. You know, you are American, you are Canadian, you are English. These are your values.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not so sure Zizek always agrees with that.
Well, so there's an obvious point here that I know you know, but it's probably worth making. It is possible to go so far left that you come back to the right, and it's possible to go so far right that you come back to the left. You know, like at that point, I because I'm not trained in politics, I'm trained in psychology. I start going at the way Peterson is, which I think is really insightful, is let's look at the personality traits that point to your political preferences. And if what you're saying is you want national pride and strong boundaries and a strong sense of self, you know, then that is going to manifest over here. If you want to be very, very open and flexible, and rather than be like, we are this and you are that, we want to be all one thing together, that's another sort of political manifestation of a psychological drive. But no, I mean, people go, oh, look at China, it's a communist nation. And then other smart people come along and go, it's the most capitalist nation on earth. Look at America, that's a Western capitalist democracy. No, it isn't. Other people will then come in and say, it's not capitalism, it's cronyism. It's not a democracy because the people are not in charge, blah, 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 so on and so forth. So yeah, no, I'm sure that if I mean, maybe that's something that Zizek and Peterson could look at, is like, well, you know, Zizek could put the case and say, is this the type of thing you would like to see in the world, Mr. Peterson? We've already done that. It was done under Tito in Yugoslavia, when it was far, far left socialism, bordering on communism.
But then I do think when I look at China, I think they do, and I don't know if it's a Chinese trait or it's something we don't learn, but they all
Holy fuck, dude. Stop. A Chinese trait? Stop!
Well, yeah, culturally, I don't mean, you know exactly what I mean.
I don't. No, I don't. No, I don't. I have no idea what he means, Your Honor. Whatever this white man is about to say.
Stop it. They obviously realize that the economy isn't a thing. It's not. They created it. They can do whatever they want.
Why would that be a Chinese trait?
No, it's not saying it's a Chinese trait. They do it in China, so it's culturally Chinese, isn't it? I see. Must be.
Maybe they don't use the word trait.
Yeah.
Let me help you, comrade, before you send yourself to the gulag.
But like, they do. They go, okay, no, we're not going to let you spend 100 grand on every house, and we're not going to let inflation go up, and we're going to control this, we're going to control that, we're going to control this. Oh, you want to spend 50 grand on that house? No. We say that's worth 20k. We don't care what the economy or the market says.
Is that what they're doing in China?
A little bit that I understand, yeah. But that does something to wage it,
that's what they're doing in China. It might have been at one time, but I mean, there's a lot of fucking property billionaires coming out of China. I know that the economy's tanked a little bit now. Yeah. Who can say? Now you have your little book there with your notes, presumably to defend the vile communist Slovenian.
He is a vile communist.
Is he? I don't even know what he is. Maybe he is the party of plastic penises. Whatever you want.
I think it's what I was saying before. No one opens my mind quite like Zizek does, or pokes fun at stuff like Zizek does, and I think that's why he's a good teacher. Whereas I get the feeling from Peterson, he's made me, as I'm saying about communism, I've listened to his stuff and gone, oh, I should read about that. That's interesting. I didn't know a lot about that, but you're just going to say intellectual level. I don't think there's much comparison there, but I think that they should. The debate would be really interesting because a lot of people will conflate stuff they don't understand with someone being wrong just because you don't understand it, or it's going to take you to have cliff notes to read, you know, is to try and understand what he is saying. Doesn't mean he's incorrect. Just because Jordan Peterson is understandable, and I would say very understandable and very clear, doesn't necessarily mean that he's more intellectual than Zizek.
No, it doesn't mean that he's more intellectual, but this is how I haven't been attacked for it yet, but as far as the Spartan life coach goes, when I am attacked for it, which I should be at some point, the lack of intellectual rigor in the Spartan life coach, my defense will be, yes, but it's functional. So that being an intellectual is great, but we actually need functional advice at the moment. We need, psychiatric diagnoses of subjectivism and objectivism and all of that might be fun and interesting, but it doesn't give us a very clear indicator of whether it's okay for us to wank ourselves silly over pornography or not. You do actually, like, you do actually have to take a stand on some issues. Like, they're two uncles, and you have an uncle who's a lot of fun and silly and will make you laugh, and then an uncle who's actually going to help you to go and get a job and make some money and start jogging again.
Well, yeah. Why can't it? But then I think doesn't Zizek say why can't everyone be both?
I don't think everyone can be both, but we can certainly all enjoy both of them for what they represent. I don't think there needs to be. I really want to break the left-right paradigm because it's tedious. It's absolutely fucking tedious, and I think it is breaking anyway. So we may as well just break it faster.
Push it up there.
Heavens, the non.
You can't help it. You love it. It's Lisbon.
It's Lisbon. That's the fourth time. It's the fourth time. Fourth time's the charm. I'll just give in to it now. Yeah, no, I think that there is a strong argument to be made about functionalism, and if people are interested, it's available to watch on YouTube for free. Will Self, the British author, and Zizek sort of versus Zizek, and Will Self gives Zizek, his friend, a very, very hard time about making his work impenetrable. Fucking hell. I should have eaten more sugar.
But Lacan's like a deity to him. I don't know anyone who can read that, and I don't know any intellectual who can read it. And he's the only one I've ever read or come across that's actually ever balls, or not, maybe not balls, but because I've not gumption either. Actually tried to say that I understand what he's saying.
Doesn't it?
I think anyone does that.
Doesn't it diminish something's value if nobody can fucking understand what's being said?
Well, doesn't it mean everyone has to catch up to it?
Not if everybody can not catch up to it. I mean, Zizek is a struggle for me. I got it on. I think I told you this. I got it on Kindle. The False Dichotomy of Migration, whatever that book is properly called.
A particular subject.
It's not that one. This one's supposed to be easy. It's a recent one.
All right.
Against the Double Bind or something it's called.
Yeah.
It's not called Against the Double Bind. But the thing is, you're either he's like, the double bind is you're either a fascist who wants to push everybody else, all the immigrants into the sea and let them drown, or you're some weak-willed cuck liberal who wants to invite anybody in with no checks. And he was like, Against the Double Blackmail is what it's called. And I was reading that on Kindle. And Kindle, the cheeky fucker, said, you have the reading speed. It's like, you have the reading speed of somebody who's been reading for 8 years or something. I was like, you cheeky bastard. It's Slavoj Zizek. You try reading it faster than this. I'll do a paragraph. I'll go, I got that. Second paragraph, kind of got that. Third paragraph, I'm like, what did you say, Slavoj? What does this mean? What does this mean?
No, but it's nice to pretend you understand it as well. That's what I like to do.
I don't enjoy that. It makes me very, very fucking anxious. I'm sat there and I'm like, I can't go past this paragraph because he might have slipped something in there that I don't agree with. The interesting thing about that particular book, unless I read it very wrong, is it's actually way more conspiracy theory than he is openly in his seminars. Now, there might be a reason for being obfuscatory and for obfuscating if you're saying something but you don't want anybody but the people who are really prepared to listen to hear it. He basically, my reading of Against the Double Blackmail, the first 3 chapters, was a very heavy implication that the desire to stir up anti-immigrant feeling was a very deliberately constructed effort. Like there was a reason for doing that, and it was a conspiracy to make that happen. particularly anti-Muslim feeling. Now, he doesn't really say that in his lectures. He's not that guy. He's not like, oh, the powers that be are trying to push us in this direction. He's not fucking Alex Jones, is he? But in his book, Against the Double Blackmail, there is a bit of that in there. So maybe some messages that would get someone assassinated get buried. Maybe there's a point to it there. But other than that, I think you should be able to speak in a way that, you know, more people get it. It's not really good enough that only fucking philosophy graduates can get it, so they can jerk off in Facebook groups over each other's open mouths, going, look, I understand Zizek. Or the big wank that they love in these groups is, Zizek's a pseudo-intellectual. I'm beyond Zizek. I'm like, oh, Christ almighty.
While having a slight glass of red wine.
Yeah.
And pate.
Yeah. Oh, you're still on Against the Double Blackmail? I read that in an afternoon. I'm like, did you? That's great. Well done. Yeah, no, I do think that if something is non-functional and impenetrable, then in my view, that would reduce the value of it. You also need to commit. You need to commit to a position and say, look, this is what I actually believe. Just being given a position, going, what if the opposite were true? And then turning the position on its head and inserting a joke about a plastic penis is not really adopting.
No, but don't you think that's what we quite like about him? But he is just making you think about something in a different way. I mean, that's a point to him, I think we're trying to say, isn't it? We're saying Peterson is practical and Zizek is philosophical, which they both do.
I would say from that point of view, he has less merit then. He has less merit. He has less use in the time that we're in. He might be the fun uncle that you want to have a drink with, but he's not going to move anything forward. He's not going to move anybody forward. And I do think he's kind of put himself in a position of being an authority. And once you're in that position, you have a responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, potentially. But then, you know, when he was talking about Brexit, he was talking about the whole, isn't it a bit of a, not paradox, but like an opposite, that the right, they want a campaign to increase executive power on a sovereign state. And there's irony in the left wanting to banish the EU overlords, you know, but will eventually lead to a loss of jobs and culture for the working class. So, you know, that's the stuff he points out.
Yeah.
And you know, there is a space for someone like that, I think.
Definitely.
You know, if Peterson's, like you say, Peterson wants to come and argue with him and come out and just go, I'm practical. Mm-hmm. Surely they're both intelligent enough to go, well, yeah, well, this was a bit of a shit debate.
I actually think that is what could happen. I think that they would end up debating past each other because they're not really in the opposite corners that people might think they are, and they're not really in the opposite corners that they might think they are. I actually think that what you will end up with is something that probably isn't all that explosive or scintillating. I think they would talk past each other and probably agree with quite a lot of what the other person has to say, and then just go, but that's not my point. So if you go, but the sky is blue, and then I would go, but I never said the sky wasn't blue. It's just the fact that we obsess over its blueness is you know what I'm saying? One of those debates where you're like, you're kind of opposite, but you also just kind of go, yeah, past each other. I think it might be like that. And you're right there that Peterson doesn't offer that kind of political insight. He doesn't. I mean, not that I'm aware of. And he doesn't offer that kind of critique at that level where you would say, okay, this is what's happening with Brexit. This is what this side cannot see, which is what, you know, Zizek's a psychoanalyst. Peterson, I think, is trained as a psychotherapist, but both of them, their core job is to see the underlying reason, the underlying unconscious drives behind patterns of behavior. And that's what Zizek has done there. He's gone, you don't see the irony of this. What you're actually asking for is the opposite of what you think you're trying to get towards. Very Freudian.
While sips red wine. Although, if nothing else, it might just teach people how to have like a proper conversation, you know, but not shout at each other.
But that's exactly what we need right now. Is we need, as far as I'm concerned, and this is an area where I would say I'm probably as conservative as fuck on this subject. Discussion and debate and the capacity to think is such a sacred space and such a crucial skill set that we've got to get back to an understanding of how it should be done. Everybody should be retrained in the Socratic method of debate. Everybody should be retrained in logical fallacies and how to avoid them. Everybody should be retrained, and this is a point that Peterson has made several times, out of this idea that a debate is you waiting for your moment to get triggered by your opposition saying a certain key word so that you can pull the pin on a grenade and throw it verbally and just shout at them. That's not, if two people get together and they really have zero intent of learning anything or of changing, they shouldn't be in the debate. They really shouldn't, because that's not a debate. That's two people butting heads, clashing swords.
Yeah. But would you want, what do you think you did?
I'm going to flare my nostrils and point my mouth at the mic. Go on.
Do you not think that he, what do you think would happen if Zizek points out to him after he's already written that not really attacking article and says to him, actually, all you are is a biological determinist? Is he just going to see his bottom?
I would like very much for somebody to really get into Mr. Peterson on that kind of subject, biological determinism, and just say, look, let's just be really clear here. You don't like the way the radical left is trying to push us to this miasma of mess where nothing is everything and everything is whatever we want it to be. What's your real position, though? Like, your position seems to be in opposition to that. So what do you actually believe? Because if you secretly are a Christian fundamentalist who believes that a old Jewish granddaddy called Jehovah built woman secondarily by snapping a fucking rib off Adam, and then a snake came and we want to know. I have a right to know that, because I've been listening to different heroes of the alt-right recently whilst playing Call of Duty, I should say.
Lovely.
I just letting it play on YouTube and just going, oh, okay, some of this is interesting. But then when I find out what their actual core beliefs are and why they're saying what they're saying, then I'm like, well, that invalidates everything. For example, and I don't mean to go on too long in answer to this, you're aware that there's a thing called the flat Earth theory that's come back.
I won't. I'm not. No.
You shouldn't. So there's people called flat earthers. And they're saying that the Earth is flat. And I was like, I'm going to give this an hour of my time. I'm going to see, because there can't be this many fucking idiots in the world. There can't be this many fucking morons. It's either a joke, it's either a big joke, and I'm going to fucking hear them giggling in between the YouTube videos. I'm going to figure this out because I'm good at this shit, and I'll figure out why they're really doing it. Or I'm going to find out there's mass hysteria and people are just so stressed out they're going crazy because flat Earth. I mean, what the fuck are you talking about? The key thing behind flat Earth is spirituality. They're either devout Christian fundamentalists who believe if there is a flat Earth, then Daddy God is here and there's meaning still. Our lives still have meaning. We're not just floating in space. That's when you get down past, in NLP, they do this thing where you draw concentric circles and you have the external behaviors, then the perceptions that bring those behaviors, then the beliefs that bring those perceptions, then the core identity that bring the beliefs that bring the perceptions that bring the behaviors. So in this scenario, we get down from, there's no curvature on the Earth. If you look at a plane window, it all looks flat. If you fucking look at the sun at sunset, it's like, ugh. Whatever the crazy thing they're saying, and you break down at the core of it, they're scared and they're alone and they want to believe that this realm of reality has meaning. And if the Earth is flat, then we still live in a mystical, magical, spiritual realm with purpose. And if it's round, we're just bugs out on a rock floating in cold space who happen to be here for a minute and will probably go like that. Yeah, that's what flat Earth is really about.
Yeah. They obviously don't like their jobs, are a little bit sad, and want to go and play in Mirkwood.
Right, exactly. And it is run by dudes, probably similar age to me, probably also single, probably play Call of Duty. Call of Duty, Frodo Baggins. So with Peterson, with him, I would like to know if there is that point. What Zizek does is he goes, "Oh, I am card-carrying communist. You are knocking on an open door." Blah blah. I don't think that. I think that's also a bit of a mask. Like he always has the rights to say, "I'm a communist, so I'm a crazy guy. You don't want to listen to me. I'm crazy." So he's got that to hide behind. I wonder if Peterson is eventually going to break down one day and go, "Because God says so. You are a woman. Bear children. And obey your husband and cover your head, you whore." I would be really good at that.
Excellent.
I'd love to be a really severe fascist misogynist. I'd like to be the guy who checks women's sleeves to see if they're long enough. See your wrist!
We still do that when you go in the Vatican.
Yes, yeah, in a previous life. Boiling with rage because I spied an ankle. Slut. Cover your ankles.
So when Zizek says that to him, does Peterson go? Does he go one way and tries to actually have a debate with him, or does he go, "Oh shit, he's done me. I'm gonna go."
Oh shit, he fucking done me.
I'm gonna go as big as I can and just go, "Look, everyone, clap for me," and just yeah.
Well, it depends whether he can present an argument that isn't in opposition to something that many of us have already agreed is silly and non-functional. And you know, me and you actually haven't really discussed it that much on the podcast. I actually don't know where really, or personally, I don't know really where you stand on the whole transgender, gender pronouns thing. I think we've touched on it in the pub and we've touched on it in the podcast, but I don't really know. I would like to get to the core of, yes, is he a biological determinist? Because at the moment, what the role he is playing is, I just want the scientific literature to be exposed, and they are covering it up. And I wrote, when I studied feminism, I took I did it in the final year of my psychology degree, and I loved it. And I loved everything I learned from it. And I was like, great, I'm now going to use feminism, feminist thought, discourse analysis and social constructionism to attack feminism. And I had a really good lecturer, and she was cool with it. She was like, this is very good. It would never be published anywhere, but this is actually really good work. And one of the elements of, not feminism, the radical left, I should say, because they were already discussing this back in 1998. Robert Anton Wilson wrote a book about it called The New Inquisition, which was people who were liberals and on the left had neighbors, people standing next to us going, burn the books, burn the books. There were book burnings, I mean, literal physical book burnings back in 1998. Particularly the work, I chose to adopt a position where I said, look, there's a guy, a psychologist who's done work on race and IQ, and they just banned it from being published. I was like, you can't fucking do that. You can't ban science. For fuck's sake, what are we? And that's not new. That's not, Jordan Peterson keeps saying this is a phenomena, that's like 15, 20 years old. I think this goes back a long, long way.
No, this goes back 150 years ago. In criminological professors at the time were saying we can prove who's going to commit a crime by the dints in the back of their fucking head.
Okay, but that was crazy magic. That was like, the shape of your head indicates this. I'm talking about peer-reviewed research into, this is just one subject that got banned. There's multiple subjects that have been, there's also psychological research that's been done under scientific, rigorous standards in a rigorous setting to show that men and women do seem to genuinely prefer doing different things. Now, I'm not saying publish it and don't question it. I'm saying publish it and be scientists and question it. When you ban it and refuse to publish it for any reason, we have a problem. Like, it's a huge problem. That is the definition of regressive. That is the definition of a new inquisition, where you're trying to keep truth at bay. And who knows, the research might have been crap. People screw research up all the time, but you've got to debate it. Like, if a guy finds as he claimed he did. And unfortunately, he was associated with white nationalism in America. And he found that different races had different levels of IQ. And it was, I don't know, he did all kinds of double blind testing and all the rest of it to show the differences in IQ amongst the races, ethnicities. You know, that's my immediate like criticism. I can criticize what he did, but he's got to publish it for me to do it. If you don't let him publish it, how the fuck can I, a guilt-ridden liberal, you know, lefty, attack it? I can't attack it because it's never been published. So it's kind of apocryphal work now. You know, so that is anti-intellectualism. That is anti-nuanced thinking. It is against it. You should publish that stuff. Of course you should. And then rip it to shreds if it can be ripped to shreds. And if it can't, then we as human beings should look at that and go, oh, that's interesting. Why is that happening?
It needs to be smashed, doesn't it?
You can't, once you start saying this word is banned, this subject is banned, you can't say women intrinsically have certain preferences and men have certain preferences, because where I stand on that subject is, I don't know. I don't know how much is culture and how much is the nature-nurture debate. I don't know how much is natural and how much is nurtured. He clearly feels like a lot of it is natural, but I'd like to know how much. I'd like to know how far that goes. So yeah, I think you've raised a good point. It would be nice if Zizek could ask him, to what extent do you think biological determinism, you know, the fact that you're born with ovaries or the fact that you're born with testes actually affects behavior? Tell us, please. And if you have research, please share it with us to back it up.
Well, I mean, I quite liked it, but he kept bringing up the Scandinavian research, which I've always quoted. And then I noticed this when you said you were there for like 18 months, weren't you?
No, not that long. 6 months I lived in Sweden for.
You said, that's bullshit. This is one of the most gendered countries I've ever lived in my life.
Yeah.
I spoke to the guys at work. He's like, no, it's super gendered. Like, you will open a door. You know, it was all that sort of English stuff as well as all. So, you know,
opening doors, they're a little bit funny about. Carrying luggage, they can be a little bit funny about. But men are men and women are women.
You know, little things as well as, you know, big things. It's, so it is a gendered culture. It's not a non-gendered culture that have gone, we'll make this non-gendered with policies.
Yeah.
That's not happened. You know, they're still buying pink toys for women and action men for boys.
Yeah. Do you know that pink was originally a boy's color and blue was the girl's color?
Why?
Because pink was seen as close to red, but it was like a child's version of red, and red was blood and violence and action, and blue was soft and gentle, and so like light blue was originally for girls and light pink was originally for boys. And I think in the 1920s, I'm pretty sure it was in America, it's to do with capitalism and consumerism, so probably a decision was made to switch it around. And it was a conscious decision, but the interesting thing about that is that evolutionary psychologists had already said women prefer pink because they're genetically prone to look for berries when they forage. And that's why they have smaller fingers. I'm not fucking making this up. So the genetic determinism, evolutionary psychology shit, I like it. It's interesting, but they have dropped some fucking clangers. They've dropped some absolute fucking clangers in their time. And I just think the human being has an amazing capacity to learn. You can train people to be whatever you want. You can train them in whatever direction you want them to go into. And you don't have to do it generationally. You don't need 5 generations to create like a warrior race. You can do it within this lifetime with one group of people. You just hand them over to me at age 5 and I'll turn them into a band of bloodthirsty killers by the age of 35.
Well, yeah, but there's that. You can also hand over, I don't know, 60 kids to, what was it, that Ray Mears bloke? And they'd soon be able to forage and live on their own forever.
And would manifest more competitive tendencies and more aggressive tendencies as well. It's not like this kind of research hasn't been done at all. So before we wrap this one up, Will, where do you stand on the whole transgender issue thing?
I don't understand it enough. I did speak to a
fucking wimp.
No, I did. I would say I did speak to a scientist once and said, you can't, it depends how macro and how micro you go. So culturally, yeah, it's a thing. As a person, cells aren't necessarily female or male. Organs aren't necessarily female or male. Stuff works differently in people's bodies. People's brains are different. Culturally, I think I can't quite grasp. It's got to be something in childhood, doesn't it? I don't think you're born, because what people I think always get wrong is you can't think straight away. You know, the only way you can think is by using language. So until you can start speaking, you can't think. So you're not transgender until you can think. And then when you start thinking, to me, it's definitely got to be cultural. I don't think it is.
Holy shit! Are you saying people who are transgender and pro-transgender choice are actually biological determinists?
No, I don't think so. Is that what I was saying?
I think you might have just said something really profound by mistake. Whoa, you've blown my mind, kid. Hang on a second. Hang on a fucking second. Yeah, because, hang on a second. If I didn't get much sleep last night, I might fuck this one up. So watch me dance over these laser beams and then slice my own arms and legs off. Oh no, I fucked it up again. If my position, say I'm an advocate for transgender rights,
okay,
and I say to you, these people this isn't that like certain things are going to really trigger a bad response in certain sections of that community. You can't talk about the transgender community as one homogenous whole, as if there aren't fucking politically conservative, gun-toting, blatantly racist, whatever, you know, like really, really far-right transgender people. There must be, right? So there'll be all kinds of transgender people who identify as transgender.
Yeah.
But say I'm an advocate for them as a group in a kind of a patronizing way. And I go, no, same as I would for the gay community, never say that it's a lifestyle choice. Never, you know that's a taboo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an implicit, like, it's not a fucking lifestyle choice. Baby, they were born this way, just like Lady Gaga sang. Well, if they're born this way, that's fucking biological determinism.
Yeah, it is.
Right, my brain is catching up. That means if I'm an advocate who thinks that way, I'm more of a biological determinist than perhaps Jordan Peterson is, because my position is, well, hang on, if you're born that way, but now I've fucked myself. Now I'm in the cul-de-sac of transgenderism here. So imagine you're a man, you beard, etc.
Yeah.
Looking like a Middle Eastern.
Lovely.
Looking rather like a handsome Turkish man. People would be shocked that we share the same DNA. It's incredible. I look at us here. I can't believe it. Your lovely lock of dark hair.
Never had long hair before in my whole life.
No, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
You should take yourself to Garland's and see what the boys there think of it. So say you decide tomorrow that you are a woman trapped in a man's body, and that's why you want to be transformed, transitioned, surgically transitioned.
Yeah.
Isn't me the patronizing advocate for your case to the board of medical people who will assess you? William has no choice. He should have always been, what's a girl's name that begins with W?
Wilhelmina.
I think you made that up. He should have always been Wilhelmina. Well, he's infected with some strange notion, some trauma he wants. No. He was born this way. That's even more biologically determinist in some senses than saying a man is a man and a woman is a woman. Because what I'm saying is there's something genetically inside of you, like you've got, God, it's almost mystical. Like I would have to be claiming that you have
a soul.
Maybe. No, see, you laugh, but like if you follow it logically, which is always good to do in any argument, by the way, for people watching this, just follow it logically all the way to the end. What am I arguing for? Am I arguing that you have a female soul? I mean, I can't argue you have female DNA because the female DNA would have manifested. Obviously, you have female DNA. Let's not be silly. Like what I'm saying is you weren't born as a female. You were born as a male.
Yeah, biologically.
biologically, not a hermaphrodite. You're born as a male. So am I arguing that your soul, your psyche, is female? I mean, it's...
Yeah, no, of course you are. I mean, the way it was always explained to me that I really grasped was one of the lecturers in uni when I was doing my MA said, you understand how... I'd never really understood Foucault. It didn't really make a lot of sense to me. I tried to understand it, but I couldn't break it. And she explained to me that you understand that there weren't heterosexuals first. Gay people as a cultural understanding came before heterosexual people. And I said, well, how can that be? And she said, well, before, she did give me a year, so I don't want to quote the year, but say 100, 120 years ago, it was sodomists and normal people.
Right. You weren't heterosexual, you were just a guy.
Yeah, or a woman.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
And then that's when Foucault started to click for me a little bit, but language is just meaning, understanding, and power.
Right.
And that's why I've always felt that way about people who are transgendered. But I think it's a little bit cultural as well, because I've always thought that I could be wrong, but I've always thought that until you can think, you can't make until you can think, culture has no effect on you, because you can't think, you don't understand, you can't see the world, so you don't know what power there is in language.
See, you're doing it to me again now. You're making me have another little thought about this whole issue.
Yeah.
You're a man, but you want to be a woman. Why do you aspire to being a woman when really that's a social construct?
Don't mean you aspire to it, do you?
Okay, it might not be the politically correct term, but if you want your fucking cobblers chopped off, you have the ambition of it.
Yeah.
Aspire might be. I probably did just jump on a landmine with both fucking feet. Okay, not aspire, because that implies choice. And generally speaking, that's the taboo, isn't it? Is the idea that it's a choice or something that's learned or traumatically.
But then as well, there's power in that language again, because you have to choose to, unless you're being raped, you have to choose to have sex. So how can you can say you're gay or you can say you're straight, but unless you spend time with that person that is gay or is straight, and you don't have to have sex, you can do whatever you want, but unless you're living as that understanding of what a gay or straight person is, how can you actually be gay or straight?
Yeah, you've made me think there, Will.
But I think Judith Butler was saying this all 20 years ago, and I think if you read any of her books, I think one of her books was mainly about, do we understand what the body is? Can you throw away what the body is? Does the body have cultural meaning? And I don't think Peterson's ever picked up a book by Butler.
But Zizek is a big fan, right?
Yeah, massive fan, yeah.
Is she still alive? Haven't they spoken together?
Yeah, she's still alive, yeah.
Yeah, I think they're mates.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's referenced her and said that she's had to tell him off a few times for his disgusting jokes. Yeah, can you say that the body has no meaning? So, okay, you've given me like a bit of a postmodernist pill there to fucking chew over. Like, if you are William aspiring or feeling like you must be Wilhelmina,
yeah.
Why does Wilhelmina have to be a traditional woman? Like, why do you like, do you get where I'm going with this? Like, is it that, like, what is it? Is it that you need to look and feel like your image of what a woman is? And
yeah,
that's, we all kind of agree. Yeah, kind of. Most of the time, I think there are some transgender people who would identify as gender fluid who just they just want to do their own thing.
But then they're going against what Butler said, and does your body not exist? How does someone understand you? How can I understand meaning of you?
But some of these,
their argument is not for you to understand; it's for me to feel and behave how I want to.
Well, then, okay. Now I'm really going to get myself in fucking trouble here. Watch this 40-year-old white northerner fuck this one up. So I've met people and I have followers who are in this transgender space. And you say you mentioned about the body having meaning. what if somebody shows up and they're not particularly one way or another physically, like in their body and their face and everything, they're not actually particularly one way or another, and they don't want to be seen as a man or as a woman. They want, I think, I'm assuming they would identify not as transgender, but as gender fluid, and they choose like a neutral name.
Yeah.
Then the body still has meaning there, because the body isn't manifesting as massively female or massively.
Yeah, but then you have to think anthropologically, because the body has meaning in different cultures.
Well, but we can create meaning. I mean, like what was I watching?
What I'm saying is you have to understand that they're both fluid.
Man and women.
No, the meaning of a body and the meaning of their specific gender.
Okay. Well, I'm comfortable with that. I don't know. I'll give you an example. I was watching a documentary on Putin the other night, and there's a Russian journalist who was familiar with the process of him getting rid of Kasparov, and she was being interviewed about that. And she was a woman, but she was dressed and was acting in a way that was would probably be considered kind of gender fluid. That, now I'm really going to get myself in the most amount of fucking trouble. That, I don't know that I want to fit into this socially constructed narrative, is surely a different thing than I really want to fit into the socially constructed narrative, like Mr. Jenner, who's now Mrs. Jenner. What the name?
Yeah, I know what you mean. The bird with big arse is dad.
The bird with the big arse is dad. Now, I thought I was going to get in trouble. That's a different thing then, isn't it? I mean, am I way off here? Like, if I just don't want to be fucking I just don't want you putting man stuff on me, and I don't want you putting woman stuff on. I just want you to fuck off. I'm this thing over here that's me. Please leave me alone. Yeah. This is how I want to dress. This is how I want to talk. I want to cut my hair this way. I want to do I want to dress this way. Leave me alone. But like, that's a very different thing than somebody. What I'm saying is, like, people, I don't know the words for this, but if you like are born a man and you want to be a woman, or you're born a woman and you specifically want to be a man, that's a different thing than I'm just gender fluid.
Yeah, no, but remember our favorite Zizek quote?
Yeah.
The biggest trick that neoliberal capitalism ever played on the population was making them believe there was choice in mass marketing.
Right. So what you're saying, that there isn't this choice there, that people are just living in denial?
I don't think culturally people choose. It's interpretation, isn't it? So
I see what you meant by that Zizek quote. Yeah, no, yeah. Ultimately, that's where I'm going to get to with this. Is it's probably a fantasy of the ego.
Yeah, it is. In my opinion.
And in my opinion too.
So if we behave the way we do, and we went to, we'll make up a country.
Yeah.
We'll call it Amityville. I don't know how that came into my head.
All right.
We go there, but they have obviously a different language.
Yeah.
But they have a cultural representation of what it means to be a sportsman.
Yeah.
We go there, and we're really good at sport.
Yeah.
But we're shit at their sport, and we're not built like their sportsmen, and we're shit at everything that they want to play.
Yeah.
It's still cultural. And because we can't think like them, we can't fit in. And their interpretation of us is different.
Right. It's still a cultural effect.
Yeah, which is why I think Foucault, which is why I can't understand why people keep attacking him, because he did, I mean, I might not, maybe I don't understand it well enough, but it keeps making more sense to me the older I get and the more I think about it.
Yeah. There is a term in psychology for personality disorders. Heaven forfend, I would be comparing gender fluidity or transgenderness to a personality disorder, but there is something called culture-bound syndrome. And I do wonder to what extent, I mean, we're still just trapped inside of, like you were saying before, you're still trapped inside the power of words, the power of narrative, and you're still trapped inside a culture.
Yeah, and you have to remember it's based on your language as well. There's I'll try and find the YouTube video. I think it's Stephen Fry, or it might have been Hugh Laurie. One of them took English language, I think, whichever Oxford, Cambridge or Oxford, and they were talking about Russian, in the Russian language, it creates a certain culture of the motherland.
Yes.
So there's even through speaking, it makes your brain react in a different way when you think about the people you're with and your country.
Yeah, there's implicit coordinates. Yeah,
so,
language points to implicit coordinates for a certain map of reality.
Yeah. But you have to remember, that's why I keep saying, until you can speak, you can't think. So how can you be anything because you can't understand anything?
Well, you're not anything, are you? I think that was one of the insights I got from taking acid when I was in my teens. Was I was like, really at the basic primal level, there's kind of just conscious awareness, and you can
animals don't make choices, do they? They just react.
They just react.
No, they don't even say I'm hungry. They feel and react.
Okay, so to bring some sort of focus to this, because it's almost like we're thinking about this as we go. Mr. Peterson rose to fame because of the controversy over saying that he wasn't comfortable with the idea that it should be written in law in Canada that you must use people's preferred gender pronouns. Where do you stand on that?
Okay.
Would you do it if it said, if it was, you would let it, you wouldn't fight it going into English law, like you have to use new gender pronouns?
No, but we don't have we don't have a constitution. Canada and America have a constitution, and it's being ratified all the time.
They can still make laws. I mean, say they would be done differently, obviously, in the UK. But what they could do is they could say within the education system, teachers must respect the desired gender pronouns of whatever their students say.
Yeah, I think you can get to a point though. If it take it to a stupid extreme, you could get to a point where it just all becomes jelly, doesn't it? And you just go, I don't want to come to school today because I don't associate with schooling. You know, where do you draw a cultural line?
Yeah, no, I identify as a hamster.
But I've got no problem with someone, as long as someone's polite, sits down, and doesn't hurt me or anyone else. And if they want to be referred to as chicken, it doesn't make much difference to me.
Well, I think that was
I don't want to be obliged.
You what? Sorry.
I don't want to be legally obliged to. I think if you police language too much, that does turn everything to jelly.
Do you know that that's exactly Jordan Peterson's position? It's nothing harsher than that.
Yeah, I know, but he intertwines that with, in my opinion, biological determinism.
Specifically on the issue of gender pronouns, he said he would, if an individual asked him politely to refer to them in a certain way, he would consider it, but he doesn't want it written into law. I think it's a dreadful idea to write it into law, and it doesn't seem like a very adult, mature, sane solution. See, you just made a point there. I don't know. I don't think you were trying to make this point, but it's always easier to know what to do when you're talking about an individual rather than a group. So in the case of an individual, intelligent person, friendly person, you enjoy speaking to them person, as the person who came to, there was a couple of people who came to my seminars in America. They're nice, really switched on, clearly in both cases, very, very high IQ, and they were gender fluid. They didn't ask me to refer to them any other way than by their name, and the name was a gender neutral name. And if they'd asked me to say Z or Zer, I probably would have done, out of respect for that individual. But then when you start taking it to a group level, I think that's the exact moment when the problems arise.
I'd really like to, I've always really thought about that group dynamic and how effective it is. I'd love to read something about, or someone explain to me how a group dynamic works differently to an individual. And there was a whole bullshit thing in films, an individual smart and a group stupid and all that stuff. But that might be true. I don't know. I
think it is true, because it's reductionist. I mean, once you start going, transgender people want this, you sound as stupid as the people who are like, well, the Native Americans of America all want this. Like, who says? You have no idea what the full political spectrum of different age to different backgrounds. I mean, I've recently, the reason I use that as an example was watching people argue about this on Facebook. And they were like, you know, you don't, like, one Native American pops up and goes, I'm 1/8 Cherokee, and what Native Americans want is this. And then you just get this stream of like, I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want, you don't get to speak for a whole group and treat it as a homogenous blob that all has the same aspirations and desires and fears and goals and everything else. I think the difference when it becomes a group thing is when it starts to become in law. Thou shalt, you will always do this. You must do it this way, rather than doing it with discretion and intelligence and compassion in the moment.
But I also think there's nothing wrong with enshrining things in law that stop people from hurting each other as well.
We already have those, Will.
Yeah, I know, but there's nothing wrong with. I would go that one step further with Douglas Murray wants to go.
What does Douglas Murray want to do?
As I think I understand it, he wants schools to actually have a cultural narrative as part of schooling. So, you know, this is the way we work and act in, as in you learn to act in a polite and civil manner outside, and you learn what is acceptable and not acceptable. I
think it's completely insane in every sense of that word that we don't do that and that we haven't always done it. To my way of thinking, it makes schooling pointless. If you don't have that moral sort of compass and identity and narrative to work to, especially for young people, it is fucking pointless. And yes, I would agree to the transgender issue as far as it goes in the schools. Yeah, you have to reiterate, like sometimes you have to say to kids, hey, don't bully each other, whether it's physical bullying or cyberbullying. We don't do that. You know, we accept other people's differences. We are boundaried, we are sovereign, we have rules, we have modes of conduct, but we are also intelligent, compassionate, empathic people. And if somebody experiences their self-image in this way and does that, and whilst it's not harming anybody and not breaking any laws, then, you know, so be it. That seems like a much more moderate place to come from, though, than all the screaming and yelling that's going on around this issue from both sides.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm always really interested. I mean, obviously, I'll never find out. But so if I take a test, I'm very dyslexic, very, very dyslexic, and my short-term memory is almost non-existent. But it's only psychologists telling me that. I can't get a what's the Dr. MD version? What's the opposite to a psychologist, but the same thing?
You mean a psychiatrist?
So yeah, I can't get a psychiatrist.
The opposites.
you know what I mean? I can't get a psychiatrist to look inside my brain and go, that bit there, that's dyslexia.
That's like not how psychiatry works, or how dyslexia works. But do carry on.
You know what I mean? There's no, you know, because you can go, well, so dyspraxia is something to do with the what's the nerve between your eyes and your brain?
The optic nerve.
So that's that's dyspraxia, isn't it? And then you can explain. I don't know. I'm trying to think of stuff. I can't think of anything that would make it more difficult to learn, or educationally, or I don't know. But there is nothing physically or biological that they can say this is what dyslexia is there? It's cultural.
Not at this point, no. And many psychologists don't believe that it exists.
Yeah,
as described as such.
Well, I mean, the only thing that I found that is, when speaking to everyone else I know who's been diagnosed with dyslexia, the only one single, not narrative, but single thing that we all share is dreadful short-term memory.
Right.
Nothing else, though. Everyone else experiences it completely differently.
Right.
So is it cultural? I don't know.
The dyslexia.
Is it just a way of explaining someone who's got a not as great IQ as someone else? It might be.
The dyslexia thing kind of, for a lot of reasons, slots right in with the ADHD thing. I've worked with dyslexic kids. There did seem to be some value in teaching techniques of how to concentrate, how to still the mind. There did seem to be some value in changing diet, lifestyle things. There did seem to be a difference depending on what source material was being looked at and how it was being presented. I mean, as you know, I spent years in the schools trying to get them out of presenting black and white sentences on text. That isn't written that way because that's a really good way of learning information. That's written that way because of the history of the printing press. I mean, it was just, we didn't have the technology to do anything else but grab lumps of letter and go A-N-D. That's why it's written in neat lines like that. But the brain doesn't store information like that. The brain is, you know, the research is way in the, you know, we know that it's mind maps, color, imagery, sound, feelings, smells. It's a mess in here, and trying to reduce it into these fucking piggly little, no, it's no surprise that the kids struggle with that to some degree. The IQ issue is a really thorny issue because, well, you've worked in schools as well. Can you imagine just saying, "Oh no, we tested your child," and what it is just a bit thick.
But everyone seems to have a fucking issue with that shit, don't they? Like, there's not. Like,
well, you wouldn't want to hear it, Will.
but someone's got to be bottom of the class.
I mean, the education system is probably like a whole other. We should probably do that on another day, because then you have to, like, for me, I'd be like, well, what's the objective? What's the point of the education system? And if nobody's going to write it on the wall of the school, in every school in the UK, the objective of you being here is X, Y, and Z, I'm not going. I'm not fucking teaching anymore. I'm not turning up to any of their fucking institutions, because all I can see is this is a place to fucking indoctrinate you, brainwash you, break your imagination, make you want to sit there. You know, all the problems that we have with obesity and all the problems that we have with people's lack of activity, and the fact that people are sitting still and they just want to sit still and passively absorb the TV. Well, we fucking train them to do that from the age of 4. Sit still, shut up, sit down, sit still. Oh, you're lazy, you're fat, go for a run. Well, you just spent fucking 20 years telling them to shut up and sit still. You know, it's, the whole thing is fucked. It's about making taxable slaves for the system, as far as I'm concerned. Like, get everybody into a university, get them into debt to the student loans company. The student loans company is owned by the government. You are now an indentured slave for life. Thank you. See you on the other side of your mortgage. You can retire. You'll be alive for 15 years. There'll be shit years, and then you'll be dead. So exactly. That's what that is. Just to come back to this transgender issue, do you have a problem with people identifying either as transgender or gender fluid?
No.
Do you think that we need to do more to protect the rights of people like that?
I don't think you should be able to attack them for making a choice about how they necessarily want to live. And if they believe that choice is biologically determined, I don't know which it is, if I'm honest, because I haven't been in the situation, I haven't been in that body. It's got to be one or the other, doesn't it?
I'm sure different gender fluid and transgender people believe different things. They must do. Some people will be sat there going, it's a spiritual issue, I'm a female soul in a man's body. Some people must be thinking it's genetic, this is just... And other people will quite happily sit there munching down psychology texts going, no, this is trauma, but I've learned this and I will not be happy until I am in the body that I think I should be in.
I mean, as sort of wimpy as it sounds, I think I just don't really want anyone to hit anyone else for that.
I think that that's actually not wimpy. And it's one of these strange things that I have a problem with at a political level. It's like what we don't say and what we don't address, I think, can become just as damaging as what we do say. Like, we have to start there. When I take over the fucking country,
I'm getting rid of the buses. I fucking hate buses.
Yes, William. That would be one of the places to start, especially with young folks, is to say, look, this is not how conflict is resolved. This is not how problems are worked through. You don't need to hit people. There is no reason ever for you to be hitting people unless they are already hitting you, and you have to do it to defend yourself, in which case you will go to my government-controlled martial arts schools where you will learn to destroy people with your bare hands.
I know, but like, there's a whole thing about Peterson when he was talking about men have to feel like they can smash someone's head in to feel confident. But
and then he showed a punch, and he went like this, eh? Upper body strength, eh? It's a good thing, eh?
You know what I mean? Like, I disagree with that. I don't see where that comes from.
Look, not everything he says is gold dust. Some of it is just for the benefit of Joe Rogan, so he can get on his show and sell more books. I think he's making the point. I think he's trying to thrust towards the point that men are heavier than women.
But like, why? But I don't see how knowing that you can beat someone up is going to make you feel more confident.
It does. I mean, I can beat the fuck out of most people, and I'm extremely confident. I can tell you, it really helps knowing that I could fuck someone up.
But why would that make a difference in a work context?
I think what he was talking about. I think what he was pointing to is there is an implicit violence in male to male interaction, which there is. There is.
Yeah. See, the thing is, I think this is always what I struggle with. I don't think I always click onto it, but it might be happening.
That's why you've been punched so many times, Well,
yeah, true. Yeah. True.
Blissful. I think it's called blissful unawareness. Yeah. Hey, this guy wants to punch me in the face, I better run away or punch him first.
When people say, like, I mean, I've been into, you go into a bar in Chelsea, which I wouldn't tell anyone to do, but I've been in there with friends and we've gone, look, everyone's looking and we shouldn't be here. And I'm going, who's looking?
Yeah.
No one cares.
Yeah, no, there are power games and dominance games played by men and women all the time. I mean, women are flicking their hair at each other and looking at each other's shoes, and men are flexing their muscles and squaring up to each other and deepening their voices as they speak to each other, trying to tell each other stuff. There's all of that goes on. I mean, absolutely. I'm not saying it doesn't go on. I'm not saying that every evolutionary psychologist ever said was wrong and that we aren't clearly animals, because we clearly are. Mm-hmm. And we are animals that drive and strive towards power, as Nietzsche said.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, how long? I mean, I haven't got too much longer, but I was thinking about something last week. When I was
what's happening at the end of this? What are you doing next?
I need to go pick up my wife.
Don't be late for her. Fucking hell. Speaking of dominance hierarchies, you know your place, don't you, boy?
I was talking last week about, I'd seen that tweet about the percentage of the working population that was actually in work.
Yeah.
So I've been thinking about it all week, and I can't see how it could be wrong. So if there's anyone out there that is part of Richie's gang, please explain to me how that could be wrong, or is wrong, or I've read it incorrectly, or there's got to be something wrong in there, mustn't there?
Well, some people won't have heard what you said last time, because not everybody is as fascinated by what we have to say as we are.
No, I understand that, but for the people who are, the 300 odd people who are,
explain it again, Will. Start from the beginning and just say what you said last time.
Okay, so I said last time that I'd seen a tweet that there is a higher percentage of people in work now per capita than there was in 1950, just after World War II.
Okay.
Their synopsis, their idea, whatever, there's a percentage of population that is born and that is in school or university. Obviously,
hypothesis.
Don't work.
Fucking hell, my brain isn't working today either. Hypothesis.
There is a percentage of people that should be in work that, say, between, let's say now, so let's say finished uni at 21 and finished work 65. There's that percentage now. And then which includes disabled people, people who don't work, people who choose not to work, very rich people who don't work, etc. And then you've got the 65 and over, which is retirement. So what we're saying now is that the age that can work, which we said 21 to 65, there is 80% or whatever it was, something between 80 and 100% of those people are in a job. Now, if you go back to 1950, it was 50% of that age group that were in a job. So why we ended up with more people in work when we've got more automation?
If it's true, people should know that. Because we're living within a cultural narrative of there being no jobs.
Yeah, but there must be something I'm not seeing. There's got to be. It can't be that simple.
I think it can be that simple because, one of the things I got from being forced to do psychology experiments, and one of the things that Jordan Peterson brought up about the gender pay gap, is the variate analysis. So once you start checking for other variables, everything starts to make more sense. And the statistic that you think says one thing, when you check for another variable, doesn't say that thing. So here's a potential variable, and I'm not an economist, that I would want to see what you, if it's true what you just said, then I would also want to know, and how much has our expenditure gone up, accounting for inflation. I mean, I'm sure we're even if you account for inflation, I'm sure we're spending way, 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 way more. We're just buying more stuff.
You saying we're saving less?
I would think
that the percentage of our income that we can spend on things is higher.
No, what I'm saying is that, yes, no, you were right when you said we're saving less. So whatever the money that comes through the house is, say if it used to be 70% just gets fucking banged right out the door again, and 30% gets saved, now it would be people just live in debt. It would be 120% expenditure.
70% still exists for food, bills, house. It's just the 30% is being spent on shit and not being saved.
More than 30%. What I'm saying is that people are going into debt. I mean, we're definitely in more debt than we ever were in 50, 60 years ago.
You couldn't be in debt 50, 60 years ago. Credit cards only came along in the end of the 70s.
So there you go. I think only nations and corporations and banks could be in debt, couldn't they? It wasn't possible for a human to be in debt.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at...
in the way that we understand it today, obviously loans and fucking still existed. Obviously that's still existed.
Well, banks made money from high inflation on mortgages. Now they make money from collecting inflation, I can't remember fucking word now, on credit cards, on collecting payments on credit cards.
So we should be clear so that we don't sound like total fucking dimwits. We're aware that there were mortgages back then. We're aware there were loans back then, but that the discretionary amounts that a bank would release to a office worker making £25,000 a year, or its equivalent back in the 1950s, would have been way fucking less, because the bank manager would just look at you and go, "What do you need that for?" No. And also, how are you going to pay it back?
It would have been way fucking less, because you were coming from a cultural narrative of, he understood how much a brick cost and he understood how much the labour cost, and then you'd also put on top of that the 15%, 20% interest rate. So your 15k house was still £150,000 house. Now you get 1%, 0.5% interest rates. So you're spending the same percentage of your money on your house for the same length of time. It's just the banks aren't making as much money from it.
Yeah, because there's more competition in between the banks, because there's more banks now. So the idea that more people are employable, but people still feel like they're struggling more. Well, employment is only for the purpose of accessing money. So unless people are sat around counting, like sat on money bags at home going, fucking hell, we've got way too much of this stuff, the only reason can be is because they're just banging it back out again, which would make sense. I mean, look at like your disgusting generation, these spineless, morally degenerate fucking millennials who think that they have to go on holiday every 2 weeks and drink Starbucks every day.
Oh, Starbucks. Ugh.
Well,
sure, you go to a nice little independent coffee shop, Richard.
Well, yeah, if you're a goddamn hipster. No, but expenditure, the expectation of luxury is far higher across the board, across the classes, across the education levels. You know, the what people think.
But it's kind of a fuck you as well, though, isn't it? I think a little bit, the whole hipster thing. It's kind of a little bit of a, well, actually, you told me I could afford a house, I can't. You told me I'd have a job for life, I don't. You told me I wouldn't be stressed, I am. So all I'm going to focus on is luxury.
Yeah, I get it. I just loathe it, and I loathe hipsters. I came to Lisbon last night, and I booked an Airbnb online. I was so upset with hipsters last night. I was so upset. I was like, you can't stick me in a fucking box room with flowers and a bicycle hanging on the wall and think I'm not going to notice that it smells of other humans in here. So then I booked myself into a hotel straight away.
Excellent.
Disgusting hipsters. Well, you should definitely get your wife, because you'll be killed otherwise. And I'm going dancing.
Bachata.
It's bachata. Why do you struggle with this so?
No, I like calling it that now.
Right. I think we mashed that one into the ground. Well done, William.
Excellent.
And I will do my magic stuff with this and make it all happen. I have been Richard Grannon for strengthofmind.coach, and this has been Mystery Man Will. I'm now going to stop recording. Goodbye, everybody.